Hello and welcome back to TTP at Home. Happy New Year. We are going to kick off this year with a special guest speaker that I'm excited about because I heard his organization speak several months ago, and it was a topic that, I'll be honest, I didn't even think I needed to learn about, and I learned a lot. So I think you're going to be glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Well, Happy New Year, true Texans. We are joined today by Bradley Pierce with Abolish Abortion Texas. Now, you may have thought that in 2021, we passed the heartbeat bill, and then followed shortly after that, we had the Supreme Court decision on abortion. So maybe you think, that's been taken care of and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, you would be so wrong. There are still plenty of things to worry about, and that's what we're going to learn together today. So, Bradley, thank you for being with us. Why don't we get started by you telling us a little bit about your organization and how it got started and what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, y'all, very much for having me.
Glad to have you.
Quick introduction on myself. I'm the president of Abolish Abortion Texas. I'm an attorney, been practicing in Texas since I'm 2007. And I haven't taken the official class yet, so I can't say that I'm a true Texan.
Oh, no, you're not certified.
In this sense, yeah, but I'm born and raised
Okay, and I just learned that you worked with Jonathan Stickland on constitutional carry. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, so
right.
You go way back.
I've been drafting legislation for different folks since 2011. There was a piece of legislation back then. I don't know if you remember the anti-TSA groping bill carried by David Simpson.
Oh,
I drafted that for him back then. So that was kind of my first foray into legislative drafting, and I've done a lot of that since then, a lot of gun rights and parental rights, and then abolishing abortion as well. So,
wow, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for this organization, we started Abolish Abortion Texas in 2016. We were just seeing, I guess the first time I noticed issues with the whole pro-life kind of approach to abortion was back in 2013. You'll remember then we had the HB2 here in Texas that Wendy Davis did the whole, pink tennis shoes and all that.
I remember that well.
And, it ended up passing, and there were three components of that. There was a 20-week ban on abortion. There was, you got to have, abortion doctors have to have hospital admitting privileges. And then there was you have to meet surgery center standards, right, for your abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. And I remember at the time looking at that actual legislation and just thinking, is this really how we should be approaching this issue? First of all, it seemed like it was bowing down to Roe versus Wade, right, kind of legitimizing Roe versus Wade, which I believed it was unconstitutional. Right. We should be ignoring it. Mm-hmm. Why are we treating it like it's legitimate? And then secondly, is this really how we should be dealing with homicide, right? How we should be dealing with murder by saying you got to have wider hallways and, as long as you have hospital admitting privileges, then go ahead. Go ahead and murder the baby. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like we were conceding a lot of arguments, and I know the people behind it were well-meaning and thought, well, this is a step in the right direction. Yes. But I think I just had problems with it. I think it undermined our principles, right? I'm all for compromising, to get to a solution, but not when we have to compromise principles. So that was my first kind of like, I don't know. I don't like what's going on here. Then it was in 2015, so friends of mine started getting more involved in the Republican Party, and a friend of mine became a staffer for a state legislator, and his boss told him, hey, go talk to the pro-life groups and just say, hey, I'm wanting to introduce a bill. Let's just outlaw abortion. Forget Roe versus Wade. Let's just outlaw it. Mm-hmm. What would your position on that be? He went to talk to the major groups and came back and reported that the groups told him not only would we not support that bill, we would actually oppose that bill.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
I'm serious. And so that was the first time I was like, okay, wait,
what reasons did they give?
What's going on? Well, that it really wasn't part of their strategy, right? There was a strategy that the pro-life organizations had to undermine Roe versus Wade and to seek, challenge it and get that up in front of the Supreme Court. And, kind of the classic, well, let's just keep throwing stuff up to the Supreme Court and finally, hopefully they'll overturn it.
Yeah, I think that was they go side by side? Like, let's push for this and this and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's my view. Why don't we treat it like it's murder? Let's treat Roe like it's unconstitutional.
So to actually fight it, that's odd
to say we're actually going to oppose it. Yeah,
Okay.
it was disturbing to me too.
Okay.
And so that's why we were like, well, somebody needs to actually approach this from a Roe is not law and human beings are from fertilization from human beings, and let's treat their homicide just like anybody else's.
Yep.
And nobody was doing that. So we said, well, let's do that. So we said, well, what's our first foray into that is in the Republican Party of Texas. Let's try to get this into the platform. And at the time, that was we're coming up on the second round of having legislative priorities. At that time, there was one legislative priority, constitutional carry. And so once they did that, then everyone's like, oh, wait, we can do legislative priorities?
Isn't it weird, Fran, to realize how far back we go?
Yeah.
Like to know this history.
I remember all this.
Yeah.
Like
I know y'all would know all this.
Yeah, we didn't used to.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And so then, once someone did that with one, it's like, oh, well, let's make a legislative priorities a whole thing.
And then they made 5.
Then there was 5.
Like 8.
And then there were 8.
Yes, exactly. So the year that there were 5, we went there and said, hey, abolish abortion should be one of it, and ignore Roe. I think, it wasn't exactly those words, but, ignore Roe versus Wade and treat human beings like they're persons.
And that was, I do kind of vaguely remember all the controversy around it. And I'm like, abortion is bad. I don't need to get involved in this controversy. But there was, so that all stemmed from the different methodology, right?
Right.
So, okay. But you were successful in getting it in the priorities.
Really,
so that's a pretty quick leap.
Yeah, we thought it would take several rounds of going to RPT in order to get that in there. But when we went and talked to, the grassroots, to the committees, there was definitely a lot of just behind the scenes stuff, people trying to kill that. But ultimately, people are like, yeah, this is what I thought this is what we all wanted.
Right.
I thought this is what it meant to be pro-life.
Yeah.
But then the pro-life organizations are over here like disagreeing with us, like opposing what we're doing. And
so
let me
interrupt you one more time. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
No, that's
people.
I'm here for it.
But one of the big arguments I heard when all that controversy was going around was it's because the pro-life organizations were just money-making organizations and they didn't really want to kill abortion. But I don't know that that's a fair statement.
No,
to say.
we certainly weren't making those
some
arguments.
really good friends of ours.
Yeah, no. And again, I'm friends with John Sego.
Yeah.
At that time, he was policy director at Texas Live. Now he's the president. And we actually called him before we were going. We're like, hey, John, here's what we're doing. Yeah. And I know at that time he was seeking to do a dismemberment bill, or that make that a legislative priority. And so we've been friends. And
good. I'm really glad to hear that because I knew there had been that argument.
And I think those other groups, like you said, it was part of a strategy to defeat Roe.
Right.
And that was what their goal was set on, and step by step by step. And every step helped save babies, but it didn't get us to abolishing abortion.
Right.
But I think that's the major difference. Not a belief that abortion is bad, but a strategy on how to get where you want.
Yeah, and we're certainly not. I mean, are there people, I'm sure, just like in every movement, are there grifters, right? In every movement? Yes, there are, but that's not who we're talking about here, right? And that's not the arguments we were making. Ultimately, the arguments we were making, and still are, is that what does God say, right? We're Christians. We should approach this. Ultimately, He's the King of Kings, right? He's
kind of hard to argue
looking to and say like, all right, what does God say we should do about this? And this is an issue that He's very explicitly spoken to. You shall not murder. How should you deal with murder? How should your laws deal with murder? Very explicit. And I think Scripture is very clear that life begins at conception, which for a long time everybody knew conception's fertilization. There's been some confusion last few decades from the pro-abortion movement saying conception doesn't begin until implantation. That's a whole different thing. But most people agree, like, oh, conception, that's when the, sperm and the egg come together and you have a baby.
Yeah.
And so we think, well, yeah, our laws then should treat them like they're life at that point. But here's what's interesting, and that is in Texas law, we actually do. We actually do have personhood in Texas law since 2003. The Republicans had just kind of taken over a few years before and passed what at the time was people were calling Lacey Peterson bills, right, which would make it double homicide if you were to murder a pregnant woman, right, which is, hey, that's great. The way that they did it was they wrote into the penal code that said, person includes an individual, and then an individual means it includes a human being from the moment of fertilization. It's like, well, hey, that's great, right? So we have kind of personhood in Texas law. So then, murder or any kind of homicide is intentional, knowing, reckless, criminally negligent, taking of, causing the death of
so
of
how
an
does that
individual.
not include abortion?
So then,
Wow.
it's defined as murder. It's like, well, then what's the problem? It's because at the exact same time they wrote into the homicide code 19.06, for anyone who wants to go look it up, that says this chapter does not apply to conduct committed by the abortionist,
Wow.
right? The pharmacist, IVF physicians, and the mother.
That kind of makes you wonder, how do people, now I don't know what lawmakers passed this or wrote this or allowed for the amendments or whatever, but if you're willing to put on paper, this is life, this is personhood, you cannot kill them unless you just want to kill them.
Right.
And then they have to go home and sleep at night. I don't get that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, it was written and introduced by the pro-life organizations here in Texas and by Republicans.
Ouch.
Yeah, this wasn't some Democrat amendment that came in after the fact. And so, but again, Roe versus Wade would not allow that. So that's kind of how they're like, well, let's protect babies from this, double homicide situations, but we don't want to challenge Roe. So let's write in
as
that
long as the
this doesn't
baby's
apply.
wanted, then it's murder. But yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, and what's the big lobbyist there? Is that TMA or?
On that.
Like that would have, like when you say that it was coming from Republicans.
Yeah.
They're all motivated by money. So who's donating to them that said, okay, we'll put in this?
I mean, again, it was the pro-life groups here in Texas. They're the ones who wrote that language, and it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a.
So it's not the medical association or somebody
Right.
coming in and saying,
Right.
"Don't step on our toes, and we'll look the other way."
Right.
It's God.
It was a way to deal specifically with the, a man murdering a pregnant woman situation. But then the way they wrote it, like, wait, then that would make even abortion murder. Well, we can't do that because Roe says we can't. So let's write this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that ended up there.
Okay. So then what happened?
Yeah. So anyway, so then we were able to make it a legislative priority, and so then it's like, wait a second, well, we didn't expect this much support for this already. So I drafted a bill, and we went and presented it to a number of legislators' offices here in Texas. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is interesting," but we didn't hear back from anybody. But then one legislator, it kind of floated around, and one legislator did see it and say, "I want to file this bill." And that was Tony Tinderholt.
Oh,
So
go
then
Tony.
He then
Nice.
filed that in
This was
2017.
2019, was it not?
2017
17.
was the
Okay.
first time. Yep. So then we're kind of off to the races as an organization since then.
Okay. And so, okay, then what? I mean, like,
Yeah.
Didn't Jeff Leach kill that?
Well,
girl
so
in
then kind
Kentucky?
of the brief history here is that, and we can talk more kind of about some of the ideology behind it and some of the other things that we've done, but the bill was introduced in 2017. It was killed by Byron Cook at the time, Republican chairman of State Affairs, House State Affairs. Then 2019, reintroduced by Representative Tinderholt, and that time we got a hearing from Jeff Leach, the chairman of jurisprudence and civil jurisprudence, and he gave it a hearing, and we had over 400 people came and registered in favor of it. Over 300 came and testified. I think there were only 4 people that testified against it.
wow.
But Representative Leach would not give it a vote. He said, I'm going to kill the. He said
Don't
explicitly.
get us started on Leach.
He explicitly went on, on Texas
One more
Tribune.
reason.
Yeah.
He said he said I killed the bill, right? So it's not any question. He killed the bill, and so it was dead for that session.
Okay.
And then 2021 reintroduced by Representative Slayton, and then again in 2023.
Well, at what point did we get when did Roe v. Wade go away?
So then in 2022, June of 2022 is when the Dobbs decision came down, overturned Roe versus Wade.
Okay.
So that kind of what that ended up doing. So kind of backing up a little bit. You talked earlier about heartbeat bill passes in 2021, and then we see the reported abortion numbers go down dramatically.
And that's as soon as you see a heartbeat, then no abortion. I
Right.
just want to make sure we're not talking over anybody.
Yeah. So the heartbeat bill is that if there's a detectable heartbeat, then the abortionist physician cannot perform the abortion at that point.
And that should have reduced abortion significantly, yes?
I think it did initially, and the issue is that the market went elsewhere. There's other supply for that demand, so it just shifted over. But I think initially it did reduce numbers.
Okay.
Then at the same exact session, the legislature passed the trigger bill. Right? The trigger bill just said,
Filed by Giovanni.
I know. I
Yes.
don't want to give props to Gio, but it was a good bill.
yes.
That doesn't mean we're not running a challenger against him. Just saying.
There you go. Okay. So the trigger bill just said, if and when we either pass a U.S. constitutional amendment or the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, at that point, then abortion will be completely, I'm not going to say completely, actually, abortion will be banned in Texas in the sense that doctors cannot perform abortions in Texas. And so that then happened in June of 2022. The Supreme Court did that.
22?
Roe. Yes,
Oh, okay.
2022. Overturned Roe versus Wade. And that trigger bill went into effect, which made abortion illegal for doctors to do, or for anyone except for the mother to do, and then also made it where the AG could also sue if for some reason a DA is not willing to prosecute. So that pretty much shut the abortion clinics, or at least there's still some open, but they're not supposed to be, and I don't think they are performing abortions here in Texas.
Okay. So that all sounds great, but there's a reason why we have you on the show.
Right.
So
Right.
how has this morphed the battle?
Yeah. So what's happened is in all 50 states and all the pro-life legislation, all the trigger bills, which are commonly called Human Life Protection Acts, they all have the same clause, and they all say this does not apply to the mother. This does not, abortion is a murder under existing Texas law, but then the homicide code said this doesn't apply to the mother. The trigger bill said this doesn't apply to the mother. The heartbeat bill says this doesn't apply to the mother. In Texas, we have a chemical abortion ban, right? You can't manufacture or distribute abortion pills in Texas, but that also has a line that says this doesn't apply to the mother.
Oh.
And so because that's where the demand largely is the woman herself
Yes.
who wants the abortion or wants to end her pregnancy. Well, now she can just order the pills online from out of state. They can be shipped into Texas, and those abortions are happening that way. So they can go out of state, right? There's abortion travel that's happening.
What's in Texas? Like, where would you go? New Mexico, I'm assuming.
New Mexico is one of the most common. It's one of the closest because the other, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, they all have the same similar bans as Texas.
That's what I
So, yeah,
wondered.
New
Okay.
Mexico is most common.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or Mexico.
Or you could go to Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most, you really don't have to. A lot of people are not. The numbers from 2023 show that about 34,000 women a year are going outside of Texas in order to have abortions, and about 24,000 are ordering the pills and taking them right here in Texas, and that's still allowed under Texas law.
What's the good news? Have we seen a decline in abortions? Like, do we have higher birth rate? Like,
I don't think that we have.
Nothing's been affected by this?
I think we saw a dip. I think after the heartbeat bill, I think there was a dip, and after the Dobbs decision, I think we saw a dip in the number of abortions and a small spike in the birth numbers, about 8,000. But the thing is, even that, we had about between 55 and 60,000 abortions happening a year, reported abortions in Texas, and we saw the birth numbers increase by about 8,000. Which, hey, praise God, for if those are related, which I'm sure a number of them are, praise God for every one of those babies saved, but that's not outlawing abortion, right? That still means that we have a lot of abortions, and even that, the numbers that we're seeing show that was a temporary thing, that now people have found the market and the alternatives, and that the numbers this year for 2023 were higher than they have been in several years.
How do they get those numbers? Like,
So
'cause I'm assuming, doctors don't have to report it now. So
Right.
where are we getting?
So the abortion travel numbers come from abortion clinics outside of Texas that are reporting those numbers to different,
they have to
different
report
groups.
like their hometown or something, so that we know this is a Texan
They have
that
to
went
report
into New Mexico.
what state they're from.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then the actual numbers of self-managed or self-induced abortions. Those come from 3 different areas. You can either get the pills through community networks, which is just kind of friends and clubs, like there's a whole kind of industry behind that.
Wow.
Aiding and abetting abortion, they say. There's that. There's ordering it online, and then there's also ordering it through telehealth. And now there's clinics in other states that women can go do telehealth visits, and then those doctors and clinics will then ship those pills.
Let's talk some more about that.
Yeah.
If chemical abortions are illegal in Texas, but people are going outside of Texas, how do we stop that? Is there additional legislation that we need to prevent that? Because, not only are we killing babies, but sometimes we're killing moms because these women are taking these drugs unsupervised, and it's not just like an aspirin for a headache. It's a dangerous chemical process, and it has to be followed carefully. So what can we do about it?
It's dangerous 100% of the time because the baby dies.
Definitely for one person.
He's going to die.
Yeah.
But I keep hearing more and more reports where the mother is either seriously injured or dies as well. And I don't think most of these women, especially the young ones, realize that. It's an easy solution to their inconvenient pregnancy.
Right. Yeah, well, the ones that are taking place outside of Texas, those normally are followed by, a doctor because they're going outside the state to do them at a with a physician at a clinic. The ones that are happening inside of the state, some of them are telehealth, so they sort of have a doctor, but not really. But a lot of them. What's really sad is I've talked to several, pro-life pregnancy resource center, crisis pregnancy clinics, that they used to be called, and directors that say actually there's many women that come into those to get an ultrasound because they want to in order to do the abortion. Actually, they go in and get an ultrasound to confirm they don't have an ectopic pregnancy because the abortion pills are dangerous if you have that.
Oh.
And then they'll go in and get another ultrasound after
To make sure
they do
it's
the
fine.
pills to make sure that it was successful. And
Wow.
so that's really sad.
Sad.
Yeah.
How does equal protection play into this whole subject?
So we believe that every human being is made in the image of God, of equal value, and that's what God says. But that's not just what God says, although that's enough. But our U.S. Constitution says, in the 14th Amendment, says no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Well, we believe that a fetus or embryo or zygote or whatever stage of development, a human being from moment of fertilization is a person.
Which we have established legally even. We
Well,
have
under Texas law. Yeah, in Texas law, we've established legally. We haven't yet, though, at the federal,
Okay.
constitutional level, established that. We haven't established that they're not. Roe versus Wade, didn't really address that, and now it's overturned, and so it's kind of like, well, are they persons or not? And I don't know that the federal courts are eager to get to that question.
I don't think
We actually submitted a brief in the Dobbs case, and a number of legislators from Texas and many other states signed on to that. And we were arguing for overturning Roe, but then arguing also for the court to say a fetus is a person. And I'm using fetus for,
Yeah, we get it.
from fertilization. But the Supreme Court didn't get to that. Because obviously the effect of that, if they had said, a fetus is a person, would be not, hey, states do whatever you want, which is what they ended
Right.
up with. It would be states, you have to provide equal protection, which means equal protection just means the same laws that protect born people should protect people before they're born, right? So there's already laws against murder. Well, those same laws would protect people. But in Texas, all it would take is, repeal Texas Penal Code 19.06, and there you go. The same laws that protect born people from murder would protect people before they're born.
Right. So where are we at on that? Is that something we need to address in this legislative session then?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we still have.
And is somebody? Like, have you already heard?
Yes. Yes, there will be a bill filed in this legislative session.
Okay. Do we know who?
Brent Money, Representative Brent Money.
Nice.
Be carrying that.
We were very excited to have him finally win that election. So.
Yes. Yes.
Good for him.
So we're very excited to have him.
See,
do
Fran
that.
is taking notes because she handles all of our legislative activity, and
Yes.
we're going to be all over
Right
this.
home and look it up.
Yes. So it has not yet been filed.
Filed yet?
There's a lot of focus right now. By the time this airs, hopefully this is already settled. But on the speaker's race.
Oh, right.
And so we want this to really be an important conversation that people need to have and hear a lot of the things that we're talking about here today, and that hey, Texas is not abortion free. Abortion is still happening by the tens of thousands here, and not even including the abortion travel. And so we still have a lot of work.
And it's
to do.
not. I mean, that's mind-boggling to me that it's not even declined. Like that's
Right.
literally. I think most people probably think we're done. Like. Okay, there's always going to be a few, and there always has been throughout history, and those are just bad people.
Right.
But no, it's still just the average person that, they say when you sit in church, 2 out of 3 women have had abortions, so it's like everybody. I don't know if it's 2 out of 3. I just know it's a high number.
Yeah.
But
I think it's like 1 out of 5 or
1 out
something
of 5.
like that.
It's a lot. So 20% of the women out
Yeah.
there have had abortions. So it's still, what you're telling me is it's still considered acceptable and common.
Well, and it's easier now, because now that the clinics have closed, that's created, a lot more. Basically, now we have the Amazon.com, right, of abortion.
Now you have a
right?
lot of anonymity.
It used to be harder to go to Walmart to get stuff. Now you can order it online. Right now you can get it delivered right to your home. And
Nobody has to know.
That's what we have now with abortion. So that's why we're actually seeing in a number of states, numbers are actually increasing. And in fact, the numbers nationwide on abortion this year are the highest they've been in over 10 years across the country.
Well, let's talk about, because I know this is another controversial thing that's kind of surrounded your organization and such, is we're going to make criminals out of all the moms, right? Like, do they really need to get the death penalty because they killed their baby, and we're going to send all these women to prison, and what about the dads? And so address some of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really, we have an entire justice system to sort out all of those situations. Obviously no one's talking about going backwards, like you're talking about, 1 to 5 women have had abortions and this and that. I mean, that's between them and God. That's still something we believe. We believe abortion is murder. I mean, not to say there's certain, sometimes people are forced into it and things like that. And obviously they're not responsible if they're forced into something. But most are not. It's called pro-choice for a reason. Most are not. Most choose it. It may be difficult circumstances, but not forced into it. And so, I mean, that's between them and God as far as things that have happened in the past. No one's talking about going backwards and prosecuting people in the past. That's unconstitutional under Texas law, U.S. law. You can't do that. And even our bill explicitly says that too. So no one's talking about that. But what we're saying is, the same laws that protect us should protect people before they're born. And that means that, yes, intentionally causing the death of a human being in the womb is murder, just like any other situation. And right now, our bills, the pro-life bills, treat all women as victims, right? That's why there's just a complete blanket exclusion on all women, even if you had the president of Planned Parenthood herself committing an abortion on the steps of the Texas Supreme Court.
Which I wouldn't put past.
Yeah, I mean, that's still totally legal in Texas. It's like, well, wait, no. Some women are victims. Some women are not victims. How do we sort out who is and who's not? Well, we have a whole justice system for that, right? We have law enforcement to investigate. We have justices of the peace and other judges to decide whether there needs to be a warrant. We have prosecutors decide whether to prosecute. We have grand juries for felonies to decide whether to indict. We then have judges and trial juries, and then we have the sentencing jury, and then we have appellate courts, and then we have the governor and the board of pardons and parole that can even pardon people.
Yeah.
Right? We have this entire justice system that has to be virtually unanimous in order to sentence someone for a felony, to sort out this whole situation. And that entire justice system, which will be very slow to prosecute mothers unless it's very, very clear that it's very, very heinous crime.
Right.
And so, no one's saying like, let's
And I think-
round them all up.
I think those make great talking points for the other side, for the pro-death side.
Right.
That, oh, well, they're going to throw all these women in prison and, or they're going to put them to death. But no one thinks through, like, how many of us sit at home at night and watch these detective shows or these jury shows, these trial shows, right? And we all know how it works. It's the jury decides who's, what's the punishment, and it's debatable, and they argue about it. And a lot of times things have to be unanimous, and nobody talks about that. Like, we just throw all of our knowledge out the window and say, oh yeah, how do we answer the left on that one? They really got us with that zinger, but they don't.
Right.
They don't.
Yeah.
If you
Exactly.
think through it's just so obvious. It's just people don't think through it. And
They don't.
And it's easy to make those accusations to make your point.
Which is why I think the show is so important, because
Right.
we're talking to the people that are the activists, the people that will show up in Austin and
Are you guys listening?
right, and so if we can educate them and help them realize, oh, I don't have to be afraid of the left's talking points because I have facts, I have knowledge, I have the whole justice system behind me.
Right. And whenever people are like, oh, it's going to have this penalty or that penalty, there's no penalties in the bill at all.
Right.
All it does is take away the exception. The penalties are ultimately up to the jury to decide, or the prosecutor decide what to charge, or if to charge at all. Prosecutors can even just give immunity. Prosecutors can say, or they can say, we're not going to charge, or they can say, hey, we'll give you immunity to testify against the doctor or against a pimp, or against, a boyfriend or someone who's pressuring you into it, right? All of that, our justice system is very good, not perfect,
Right.
but very, very good at
Yeah.
sorting out the guilty from the not guilty. And you've got a presumption of innocence,
Right.
And you're entitled to an attorney and all kinds of due process that's built for being really, really, really sure, not perfect, and it could be better, but it's really good.
So let's. Did you have something? I don't want to cut you off. Yes. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the other arguments that we get, like women. The whole women are going to do back alley abortions now, and now they're dying because they needed this to save the life of the mom, and the doctor wouldn't perform the abortion.
Right.
Like we've heard all these lies and these twists that make it sound bad. So address some of those.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously a huge pro-abortion talking point.
Yes.
Is that, all these women are now dying. It's like, no, they're not. They're not. And, all the pro-life bills, our bill, all say that, if there's an emergency situation and no one's trying to intentionally kill a baby there, they're just trying to save as many lives as possible, then yes, doctors can do what they need to do in order to save, if they can only save one life, then they're doing everything they can to save that life. And, they're not criminals for doing that.
Right.
And there's plenty of guidance out there, and it's doctors. There's some pro-abortion doctors out there, and they will say what they need to in order to advance the pro-abortion side. But like you said, it's lies. The actual laws, allow doctors to do what they need to do.
I think the best counter to those arguments is to call them lies, because that's what they are. And that's what we find with most liberal talking points. They're mostly lies. Yeah. And if you recognize that up front, you could deal with it.
So let's say one of our listeners, viewers, wants to counter some of the lies, or they just want to be armed with good truth. Who do they reach out to? How can you help them? Yeah,
well, they can, follow us on our website, abolishabortiontx.org, or follow us on Twitter, or, sign up for our email list. We have also on like some of these specific arguments, we have a lot of great videos on our YouTube channel that they can go check that out, Abolish Abortion Texas. And one thing on an earlier point, it's not, the goal here isn't, lock people up, right? That's not the purpose of criminal law. The purpose of criminal law, there's really three purposes, right? Number one is to teach, like, hey, here's the value of our society. Here's how we value, in this case, life, and here's when we value it. And then number two, it's to deter, right? We're trying to, if people don't agree with it and they still want to do it, then it's to create, put the fear of God in them, so to speak, put the fear of the law into them, that
like a public hanging, right?
Yeah,
people used to see it and be like, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be hanged.
I'm not going to do that because I'm afraid of the consequences, right? Yeah, that's the purpose of the law. And then number three is justice, right? Justice for the victim, which then ends up teaching and deterring. But really, the reason that we want this is not because, anyone wants to lock up 24,000 women, but it's like, no, we want babies not to be murdered, right? We want them to be deterred. And there's so many, we call ourselves abolitionists just because our approach is different than a lot of the pro-life kind of establishment.
Right.
And so we think a new label is helpful. And so we call ourselves abolitionists. We want to abolish abortion and treat it like murder. And there's lots of abolitionist women, many of whom have had abortions in the past. And they say, I wish it had been a crime because then I never would have done it. It's like, that's the purpose of the law, right? That's why we want that. And so that's why what the bill is all about. And so that's why we need to get and grow more support. There's a lot of Texans that think the job's already done. Right. And there's a lot of Texans who still kind of think like, well, should mothers be subject to the law like everybody else? And, that's what we're here to kind of educate people on both of those things.
Yeah. And I think it's perfect timing because we are about to start a legislative session and that we have work to do. So True Texas Project will be on it and we're happy to work hand in hand with you. Great. So thank you for all this information. I know that you have so many other things that I wish we had time to, because I'm just learning more about you and what you're involved in CPS and things like that. So maybe we'll have to have you back on and have a whole new topic.
That would be a good topic. Yeah. CPS and the family courts.
Yes, it's such a weapon. So
I'd love to.
We would love to have that conversation. But for now, we have to just get some housekeeping out of the way, announcements and what's coming up and such. So do you have some of that, Fran?
Yes. Just some of the announcements. We will be announcing and releasing tickets very soon for Texas Tough. We are closing in on a really fabulous speaker, and it's going to be great.
Well, and by the time they see this, we may have already announced it.
That's true. By the time you see this, it may be out there.
They don't know that it is, what is today, December 10th?
Today's December 10th.
So we don't even have Christmas yet, but these guys are watching it after the new year. And I also want to just interrupt again and say we have a studio audience. So your kids are here, my daughter is here, and we love that because we are very pro-life here. So anyway, go ahead, Fran. Sorry.
Okay. We've already mentioned the legislative session coming up. That starts January 14th, and True Texas Project is going to be all over that. We will have teams at the Capitol every single week, minimally on Tuesdays. We will go other days if we need to, if there's a hearing we need to go to or whatever it might be. We are also partnering with Texas Gun Rights to host buses to take you to the Capitol once a month from a different TTP satellite. The first one is coming out of Beaumont and Katy. Those are the get on the bus locations. All of this is on our website events calendar already. So check that out and see when you can come on. We call it Hop on the Bus with us. It's going to be fun, and we're going to do lots of good work with Texas Gun Rights. On March 3rd, we are calling that True Texan Day at the Capitol. We're going to have some special programs there, tours of the Capitol, briefings from legislators, a little bit of review about how to be a good activist. And then in the evening, we've got this great thing planned. I think you should tell them about the evening thing. It was her idea.
I'm so excited about it. I lay in bed and I have these ideas and then I throw them out to Fran and I don't know if she's going to jump on them or not, but this one stuck and I decided I wanted to have a taco dinner and say, let's talk about it. And we're going to have all of our favorite state reps. There's like 25. I mean, there's like so many
25
good
new ones. I would say our faves are in the 18 to 19
And plus,
range.
when you bring in some of our statewides or some of our senators, we're going to bring them all in and you'll get a chance to have conversation like we're having. Like it's not they're going to be on a stage and you don't ever get to ask them a question. You're going to have an opportunity to mingle and talk one-on-one, and it's going to be awesome. Let's talk about it. That's also going to be on March 3rd. So
yeah. And then March 25th, we're doing True Texan Kids at the Capitol. So a special day just geared towards kids and helping them understand government and how things work. Speaking of kids, we did our first certified True Texan training for kids in November. For youth.
We're not calling them kids.
Kids, for youth. It was targeted at teenagers. And it was great. And we graduated about 30 teens in that program. And so we're going to do it again later this year in 2 other locations. Do you want to talk about January meetings or you want me to do that?
And what do we got? Okay. Got to put my glasses on. Okay, so in January, you guys, you know that we have 20 something locations around the state, and we bring in speakers all across the state. So this is what we've got lined up. We've got talks about positive patriotism, how to track your legislator, which is one that Fran actually teaches, and she's really, really good. Jesus in Politics with Bunny Pounds. I think 3 different locations are doing Trump's first 100 days. So we're going to have a talk about that. We're going to talk about the war for America, Texas toll roads, immigration law, protecting the family, how to always be prepared. You guys, there's just so much more. So find a meeting near you on our website calendar, plan to attend. And if there's not anything near you, we really believe the future of True Texas Project is our TTP at home groups. So talk to us. We would love to help you start a home group in your house where you watch this podcast, you're meeting with local people. You can talk about your local school board. You can talk about your local city council. There's no cost involved. All it requires is you opening up your home and playing a video. So it's genius. It's just a really good way to grow activism in Texas and have fun doing it. So if there's not a home group near you, you should start one. What else we got? Action items.
Action items. So we're laser focused on the legislative session right now. So be sure to mark your calendars. January 14th is opening day, and that's when that all-important speaker vote is going to happen. I think they gavel in at noon, and it'll happen shortly after that. So come and join us. The Republican Party has buses coming from all over the state. It's going to be exciting. And if you still have your Banned Democrat Chairs shirt from last session, wear that. If not, wear something red.
Or a True Texas Project shirt would be.
Or your True Texas, but wear a red True Texas Project shirt. There's always another election, people. I know we just finished an election and we're tired, but there's always another one. The next one is coming up for most municipalities and school boards in May. Not all municipalities and school boards do that in May, but most of them do. So the filing deadline for those is coming up really quick. We urge you to please step up, either run for one of those local offices or help someone else run for office. We're having a lot of success getting good people in those local positions, but we need more.
Sometimes you just have to ask somebody, right? Yeah. Like if you're thinking, oh, this person would be good on school board or city council, ask them and they might say yes, and then you don't have to run. You just have to help them win, right? So, but if you can't recruit somebody, you're going to have to step in and do it yourself.
Absolutely. And lastly, our action item is get to your January meetings. This broadcast will air on, I believe, January 3rd. So that's before any of the January meetings start. Find yours on our website events calendar and get out there and do something.
And our social activities too.
Oh, yeah. There's a ton of social stuff.
We usually have like 30 social activities a month. It's insane how much we do. So, but I just want to remind everybody that, we did great in the elections. Trump won. Everybody's excited. True Texas Project had an 80% win rate on our supported candidates. So we're all on this high, but the work is not done. We have to be pushing things in the legislature. We have to be at our school boards and those kinds of things. So thank you guys for doing this with us, for walking this journey with us and watching the show and just being an activist. We just love you for it. So here is to Texas.
And here's to True Texans.
Thanks, everyone.